Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Looks like we've leveled out. This is technically the May Dr. NAACLS, but we had to reschedule. Thank you everybody for your patience. I had some last second unexpected conflicts and I had to make some adjustments at the last second, but I'm glad we got to jump on now. And of course we will make this available on YouTube, which is why we put this disclaimer on every Dr. NAACLS. So NAACLS compliance requirements can change realistically at least twice a year, generally after the September board meeting and an April board meeting. So we always like to warn people that if you're watching this 6 months from now, a year from now, and we start talking about compliance requirements, please double check the documents on the website, and or if you still want to make sure you have the right information, please feel free to contact NAACLS staff. Joining us today is Frankie Lyne, who is a NAACLS review committee member. And this is, while we appreciate any time a review committee member joins us this week. This week is extra special because we have our review committee meetings next week. So Frankie is in the middle of doing a ton of work for us right now, and she still managed to take time. Also with me is my colleague, Jesse Jasso. Jesse handles, among many, many things, new programs coming through the process for initial programs, and also program directors going through applying for a new program director position. And my name is Mark Spence. I am the Director of Strategic Initiatives at NAACLS. So a lot of things we'll be discussing today, most of them a little later on, are really suggestions. We'll try to make clear what's an actual requirement or not. The first few of these may get into requirements, especially when we start talking about billing and stuff of that nature. But a lot of the stuff in the general session won't necessarily be about compliance, but rather maybe some recommended habits to get started with, and then obviously things you can amend to whatever works best for you. But this is really based on very common questions we get from new program directors, and also hearing maybe some frustrations from reviewers or review committee members about things that could have made their work a little bit easier as they approach reviewing the materials. The first thing we really recommend to do is really keep track of your award dates, and specifically your NAACLS award. So when we say NAACLS award, we don't mean necessarily the PDF certificate you get with colors that say, hey, this program is accredited. We mean the document that has signatures by the board president and the CEO that says this program is awarded so many years of accreditation, and it will tell you when your next material review is, whether that be a progress report, a 5-year interim report, or a self-study, and then it will give you your end accreditation date. Based on that document, you will be able to kind of chart out what your accreditation cycle will look like. Also very helpful information on that document is if you have a progress report or a 5-year interim report, that award will tell you exactly what's required for you. When reviewers look at the interim report or progress reports, I can speak at firsthand, seeing that in the room, they will specifically refer back to the award to say, what was the recommendation of compliance that we're looking for this program? So as an organization, we don't want you to have to resubmit information that's already been proved compliant, because it's a waste of your time, and it's also a waste of time of our volunteer reviewers. So Frankie, when it comes to the award, do you have any recommendations about what a program director can do with this document to make sure it's always kind of relevant and top of mind when necessary?
Just to make sure that they review everything, they've got everything current. And I was looking at the core standards for maintaining your accreditation, and that's a nice overview of what you're saying here about submitting your required documents and the timelines. They have a timeline. And also, as you're going to talk about later, when you do these reports, you're not alone, and you've got NAACLS support and your own faculty who support you. So bring them in on it as well.
Perfect. So annual fees, and I think Frankie has something to say about fees in general, but we'll in a second, but we'll start with annual fees. So we kind of as a result of transitioning phlebotomy and MLA programs from an approval process to an accredited process, those programs used to be billed at a different time. That has since went away, and starting in 2023, all NAACLS programs gets billed at the same time, which those invoices start going out on June 1st. Those are kind of done in phases. It's not all of them sent at once. It's just obviously our accounting department is juggling many responsibilities. So those start going out in phases on June 1st. And then those fees are ultimately due on September 1st. But it's something for you to keep in mind about when to expect those items, definitely when they're going to be due. And on the NAACLS website, on the program directors page, there's a link to see what those fees will be for the next 3 years. Frankie, did you have other recommendations about billing and fees from your experience as a program director?
Just some additional site visit costs that I learned the hard way. When you're budgeting for your site visit, don't forget that you may be providing lunch for a group of people. You may need to provide transportation, accommodations. So just make sure you have plenty of time to work that into your budget through actual spending.
The annual survey programs, which kind of previously had been referred to as the annual report, but really we're trying to make sure because we have a different annual report. So the annual survey programs is the survey you receive every fall. And this is where NAACLS gathers benchmark data and also specific information that we need internally. And for those of you that attended CLECA this year and sat through Jim's presentation, you know that we're working with ASCLS and the professional organizations to develop maybe additional questions that may be helpful to workforce development and potentially asking for funds from Congress. So if you notice additional questions on the survey this year, that's why we're trying to be very sensitive because nobody likes to fill out a long survey. So trying to keep it focused to questions where we'll actually use that data. But I thought it'd be help to bring that up here. One thing I would like to point out, a question that staff will get often is that if you submitted a self-study in the fall, you also need to complete the survey, and you do. The survey is required every year, regardless of any other report you may or may not submit. So Frankie or Jesse, do you have anything to add additionally about the annual survey? Or it's pretty cut and dry, but I thought I might as well ask.
No, you said it beautifully. Please turn it in.
Just, it's a great document to keep as you prepare for other requirements that you may need to submit to NAACLS. So for your 5-year interim or progress report, you've got this data right there, so make sure you keep it in a safe place.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Frankie. One thing we hear a lot from newer program directors who are taking over, not a lot, but frequent enough, is that their predecessor may have not have shown them where they have archived this information that they may need to complete a 5-year interim or just so they have the data of the previous years. So if you're one of those lucky people who may be starting to contemplate retirement or maybe looking to a transition to a different position, having the historical survey information available to a potential successor is incredible, would be, I would assume, incredibly helpful to that successor. Upon completion of your survey, you should get emailed directly the results of your survey. It's automated within our system. If you don't get that stuff, obviously you can contact staff and we can find that for you. Workshops. At this time, and for quite a few years, the NAACLS historically has 2 workshops a year. We have one immediately prior to CLEC, meaning CLEC generally starts on around noon on a Thursday, and we will NAACLS has had a workshop, I think I would guess, for at least the last 20, 30 years, the morning of CLEC. So that CLEC workshop is not part of the CLEC fees. It's not part of the CLEC registration. We have a separate registration and separate fees for that. ASCLS is generous enough to share those their resources with us, but otherwise those processes are separate. And then we also have a workshop in November in Chicago, and that is generally a full day of workshop. Both these workshops tend to be geared towards the accreditation process and kind of variations within that. Some of those variations could include anything towards really focusing on frequently cited standards. And I think the last one in February was focused on not only standard compliance, but really practical advice of filling out a self-study and hosting a site visit. Frankie, I don't know if you have anything specific to say about the workshops or your experience at the workshops?
Just that I really think it's a must. If you're a new program director, when I became program director, I had not attended a workshop, and it was like a light bulb going off when I attended my first workshop, and I attended several after that. It's just so helpful and so reassuring, and you get to network with your peers and NAACLS, and it's just it's not required, but I would require.
Yeah, one thing I heard a lot as NAACLS staff was gathering videos for some of the 50th content we were putting out is people talking about the first workshop they went to and really starting to develop that network and those colleagues and peers that are really in similar positions that they are, whether it be the type of the program they are in, or kind of their experience level in the field. So I think that's kind of an understated benefit to the workshop, especially when people have to weigh whether they attend workshops hybrid or in person. So that's something to consider. Definitely the benefit of in person is you can start developing those professional relationships that can benefit you down the road.
Right. If I could say something.
One thing I remember was we were all shaking our heads simultaneously, the speaker, because we all had the same question. So it was definitely worthwhile.
I see a lot of new names here, and then a lot of names that I've recognized, just for the last couple of months that I've been processing packets. And I do have to say that for those applicants that hope to submit their packet soon to me, if you look at the requirements under the NAACLS knowledge of accreditation, it says you have to have one or more of the following. So you have had to have been previously approved as a NAACLS program director. You've had to have worked under a NAACLS program director, and they're able to vouch for you and provide a letter, that they were your mentor. Or you can go to a NAACLS workshop. So while Frankie said that it is not a requirement, that is one of the ways that you can meet the requirement in order to possibly be approved as a program director for the NAACLS knowledge of accreditation portion. I know a lot of times I get calls and that's what's missing. So if you do expect or plan to submit your packets in, the next couple months, please note that that is a firm requirement that you really can't go around, knowing what is NAACLS and the knowledge of accreditation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. That's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this section is starting your file, and these are kind of these items that I referenced before of, again, not requirements, but things, habits that may be helpful as you move through the process. So your permanent file, not to be confused with the permanent file on your students that is required in the standards, is a recommendation for maybe the items you want to keep and always know where they're at and quick, so in case you need to reference them. And that is, those are all your programs awards, all your annual survey submissions, as I mentioned before, and your program director's approval letter. That letter, as Jesse kind of referenced before, that letter demonstrates that you've been approved as a program director moving forward. And as the way our processes are now, you don't need to go through the whole process of evaluation should you change positions or should you move on somewhere else. So that's a very important document to make sure you have on you. Plus, I think it's also required in the self-study parts.
Right. Mark, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I just want to clarify. While if you were approved as a program director and you move on and you want to be program director at another institution, you still need to notify NAACLS. And you would still have to turn in a packet to us so that we have database entry, but it's not as extensive as the original packet. So I don't want you to think that the letter is like, oh, like a free letter, I can go anywhere without telling NAACLS kind of thing. I just like to put that out there to clarify.
Thank you. Frankie, did you have anything to add?
No, I think we're going to talk about report prep. So I think my comment that I was going to share here, I'll just share it when we get to that point.
Great. Okay, here we are, report prep. So what we mean by this is really kind of taking the time out a few years or farther enough out for your self-study to start putting together and noting the items you will need to kind of demonstrate that you are satisfying the standard over time. The one that comes to mind really is to, for example, communication with your affiliates, things of that nature. Your advisory board minutes. Some of these items maybe difficult to pull together a year out from your self-studies due because it really requires maintenance over a longer course of time. And that's why it may behoove you when you're pretty far out from your reaccreditation, just do a double check, make sure you're up to date with the compliance requirements, because as we said, those can change a bit once to twice a year to make sure that you are gathering the materials you need over a course of time. So now, Frankie, it's your turn.
I just made a couple of notes here that sort of go along with your creating a file and getting ready to prep for your report. Your graduate and employer surveys, make sure that you've got those accessible, that your handbooks are up to date. Again, just kind of going on a schedule or a timeline for things outside the classroom, that if you have a website, program information on your website, that your benchmarks or outcomes are current. And in any in-house reports, if your sponsoring institution is a college or a university, you're probably doing annual planning and evaluation reports, and those are very helpful. That meets that evaluation requirement for continuous quality improvement, and having those annual documents are extremely helpful to you and your program for student success and meeting NAACLS requirements. I think that's all I had. I did have one other thing about when you're putting together your self-study, and this is just me, saving your relevant documents as PDFs and not as Word files, when the format may change if you upload. So just odds and ends to keep in mind, and use screenshots instead of links to catalogs and that kind of thing. Your documentation that you need to upload, instead of a whole catalog, just do a screenshot of the necessary information related to accreditation or curriculum that you're going to pull from the student handbook, faculty handbook, etc. So again, that's if you're in a college or university. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Frankie. And finally, kind of just an overview of the resources you have available that NAACLS makes available. Obviously, in addition to those workshops, and in addition to these Dr. NAACLS sessions, We have VIP mentors. Those VIP mentors are assigned to new program directors and are available for 6 months after program director approval. For those of you who are listening that are experienced volunteers and experienced program directors, if you're looking to become a a VIP mentor and provide a resource to new program directors and kind of answer the questions about the NAACLS process and kind of getting into the swing of things for being a program director, please feel free to contact me by email after this. We also have our discipline lead persons. We'll break those down a little later in the show, at least who they are, but you can find those on the website on the program directors page. So the discipline lead persons are review committee members. So they are really, really in the nuts and bolts and nuances of the most current discussions of NAACLS compliance. So our VIPs are broken up by discipline, and they are there to answer standard interpretation. If you have a question about closing the loop on for standard 2 assessment and maybe how to document that, or how to, what we're looking for documentation on advisory board and things like that, those are your people. What we kind of want to not have our DLPs deal with is, hey, I just completed my progress report. Can you give it a once over? Or my application pack is done. Can you review it before I send it in? We try to avoid stuff like that for multiple reasons. A, that would increase their already sizable workload quite a bit. And B, when NAACLS comes to accreditation decisions, there's a lot of eyes on it. So, and that's kind of how we assure a high quality, is that there's people with different experiences and different strengths and weaknesses that can kind of look at the document, and we can really review it extensively to make sure everybody's up to compliance. So to put all that pressure on one person and be like, well, this person said it was compliant, therefore it is kind of not, that's not really useful to them. So, or useful to you as a program director, but they are definitely more than willing to help, like more targeted standard by standard question. And finally, of course, is NAACLS staff. Our expertise is more in accreditation policies and procedures. When are things due? How should things be submitted? If you don't know where your question falls between those two, please start with NAACLS staff. We are the paid portion of this organization, and then if we can't answer the question, we'll know to get to somebody who can. Also, some resources that aren't, most of them of which are not NAACLS sponsored. There's a CLS educators listserv, which is a very, in my opinion, just looking at it from afar, a generous, collaborative, and very active community. NAACLS staff kind of use it to see what trends are being discussed. And it is a very active listserv. There's Clinical Laboratory Educators Forum on the ASCLS page, I believe, and Facebook groups also are very active, usually Facebook program directors groups. You'll have to find those independently. I can't give you a lot of guidance to that because I'm not currently on Facebook. And I'm not a program director, so they probably wouldn't let me in. And also there's the NAACLS news. In addition to kind of keeping you up to date on policy changes, we do try to develop content that will be of assistance to kind of you as an educator and you as a program director of a NAACLS accredited program. Recently, our review committee chairs just penned an article about the change that they are seeing in students post 2020, and as we kind of find a new path forward after the pandemic. And then our board president, Mary Beth Flaws, penned an article about kind of where she sees the profession, trends in the profession and how they are affecting education and accreditation, maybe not in the most positive way. So I highly recommend you find those articles if you have not read them already. And we do, as I mentioned at the top, we do repost all of the NAACLS news via YouTube link, so you can watch at your own schedule. Did I miss any resources, guys?
No, I just had one more comment, Mark, that about when you're putting together your report, keep in mind that the readers don't know your program, and try and be as specific as possible. And especially your maybe your self-study narrative, have somebody not connected with the program read it to see see if they understand what you're trying to convey.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I think one thing that surprises newer program directors until we mention it is that all of the forms and materials we give reviewers are readily available to our program directors on our website. So they may not be as readily available to our reviewers, but if you go to our documents section of our website, you can do a term search and you can find the self-study review form. You can see the site visit form. I do know it's not uncommon for program directors to find a colleague, maybe in another college in the healthcare system, to just give the self-study review form and say, can you go through this? Are there any items you can't find? Are there any items that aren't being communicated? Because as Frankie so aptly put, you know your program, but these reviewers don't. So whether it's making things clear in the narrative and making sure the grammar is clear, or whether it is documentation of affiliation agreements and connecting affiliation agreements to clinical facility fact sheets, stuff like that, which may be clear to you, may not be clear to the reviewer. And this will come back to you, because if the reviewers who are extremely due diligent and will give the professional courtesy to go through the self-study to the extent that they feel they wish the thoroughness that they would expect if they were the program director submitting a self-study, at some point they do have to move on and complete the review. And if they can't find it, they're going to kick it right back to you and say, hey, I couldn't find this. So those extra steps at the beginning will save you a lot of work later on when the deadlines are a lot tighter. So I'm glad you brought that up, Frankie. Jesse, did you have anything about the resources before we move on to the general Q&A?
No, those are all great. All of our documents are live and living, as I like to say. So definitely always go to the NAACLS website, go to the documents section to make sure that you have the most up-to-date version. And that includes our packets as well. Maybe something you've downloaded in January might not be valid now. So it's always important to go to our website and or reach out to your program coordinator or, anyone in staff. And we are always more than willing to help.
Okay, so real quick, we'll go over, these are the current DLPs, as we mentioned before, the discipline lead for people. They are current review committee members. A little bit of warning, this will probably change in the next few weeks because we generally change these positions after our review committee meeting, which is next week. So again, when this information is updated, it'll be readily available on the website. And also for those, these are all volunteers, as is Frankie, generously volunteering their time and expertise. I see a few volunteers on the call today. So a very genuine thank you for volunteering your time, whether you're a review committee member or just have time to do a self-study every once in a while. Each step is extremely important. So Q&A time, first couple questions are will be kind of slide under Jesse's expertise. So Jesse, I'll do these one by one. Can you discuss the requirements for receiving program director approval letter for a new PD?
Sure. So you would email your program services coordinator. You can find that person on our website. If you go under program directors, you'll see the DLP's name on the left side, and on the right side, you'll see program services coordinator, just depending on the program type. And or you can always email me as well. My information is on our website. We will send you the application form. Please note that is the only form that is not on our website, and it's done on purpose because we want you to reach out to us so that we can explain to you the whole process and the steps and how to complete this packet. So you would provide a program official approval form, CV, narrative, documentation regarding teaching, education, and then we need things from the primary source. So we would need ASCP, BOC verification, transcripts, and sometimes people have letters of recommendation. Now, depending on the program type, you might need additional documents, but all of that is explained in our checklist, okay? So once I receive everything, it goes out to our volunteer reviewers that form part of one of our committees, depending on the program type, and it can take up to 2 months for you to receive review back, a determination back. Everything that we do is via email. We are electronic only, so that is very important, not to mail anything if you can avoid that. And yeah, you can email me and I'll send you my email right now, and I can send you the application form. And then there's another question, I believe. It's kind of
Yeah, let me read this question so everybody gets it, and then you can take it from there. Does an assistant program director need to fill out a form of a new program director?
So NAACLS only recognizes one program director. So if you have a co-program director, maybe somebody in the morning and then somebody in the evening, you would have to pick and choose who you would want NAACLS to recognize. That is the person that would submit their packet for review. So we could potentially, approve them as program director. We don't mind adding somebody's name in our database as a contact, but no, they would not get an approval letter.
Yeah, that's well said, Jesse. And just to provide a little clarification, because I'm assuming this person is new, programs can label internally any label they want. Again, as Jesse said, there is one contact that NAACLS expects to qualify for all that can be compliant with all the standards and is our main contact person.
Thank you, Mark.
For initial self-study, what version of the standards, et cetera, is used for the final submission, i.e. do you use the most recent one or relevant at the time of the initiation of the work towards the submitting the self-study? So the answer to that is, generally for the standards, you can, if it takes you about a year to develop your self-study, which is what expected is, you can use the standards currently available at the time. What I would recommend is if you're working on an initial self-study and you are an initial program, I would follow the NAACLS news, keep an eye on the public comment for new standards. So when standards change, it's a very formal process. If it's a substantive change, meaning it's not just grammar or changing a period or changing very, very minor things that doesn't affect the meaning of the standard, those go out for public comment. Public comments are announced on the NAACLS news. Many of you may know, since we're going through a standard revision right now. And then if it's just one standard that changes briefly or just a little bit, you would just, I would expect to anticipate that and make those changes as it goes. If you submit your self-study between those changes, so let's say you submit a self-study while something's in public comment, you will not be expected to be compliant with a standard that was not approved in your submission. If you mean more generally in your with the larger revision of standards that's happening right now, I would be focused on the current standards as written. While we did send out a draft of the standards, we did receive public comment. Those public comments are going to the review committees in July and the board in September. I'm not speaking out of turn because our board president said this in the last Dr. NAACLS, is that those standards will not be up for a board vote for approval in this September. So the earliest they would be approved is April 2024. And then there's a whole implementation period after that. So which is to say, it is going to be quite a while before we accept self-studies under those standards. And I can tell you based on previous experience and just the way NAACLS likes to do business, is that we'll make it very clear what that demarcation line will be of self-studies accepted after this date will be under these standards, and self-studies accepted before this date will be on these standards. So that kind of demarcation line is very specific with the extensive standard revision we're going through right now. For a standard revision or like the kind of piecemeal standard changes, when one standard may be added or what, I mean, not added, but slightly revised, it's just going to be a matter of working with program services, kind of trying to see what that calendar is going to be. But we're not going to hold you to compliance with a standard that wasn't approved before you submitted. And generally self-study submission dates are before the board meetings anyway. So it's kind of hard to give a specific answer without really knowing the details. But we can handle those details offline if you have more questions.
Right. And then if I could just add in, that's why we always say every document that we have is a live and living document. Always go to our website and refer to the latest standard that you see there. Or the standard document. I always say, please don't download it and save it on your, your laptop kind of thing. Always look, there's a date to see when it was last modified. And that goes pretty much for all of our documents. And for program directors, where they have a self-study due, Staff Troxel, she's a coordinator as well, but she also helps us send out documents and reminders and whatnot. She always sends out courtesy reminders if you have a self-study due. And then she will tell you in that email what version of the self-study form that you need to use, as well as the standards. So we don't leave you to try to figure it out yourself, if that helps.
Okay, I guess that one. Sorry, I lost my place in the list.
Okay.
Is ASCP certification for program director applicants outside of the US? You want with this one, Jesse, or you want me to take it?
Yeah, I can take it. Yes. ASCP BOC, they do have international certifications. You can go onto their website. They are a third party. So I would not be able to quote every single country, but many countries and for many different disciplines do have the test, and it usually shows like ASCP and then like an I at the top.
Mhm.
So you can definitely get your certification. That's a firm one. If you don't have the ASCP BOC certification, most likely the packet will be denied. And we also have an appeal process that I won't go through right now. But yeah, I mean, it's a requirement. I don't know if you have anything to add, Mark.
No, but just as if you are at an international program looking for think about NAACLS accreditation, the standards are the standards. We do not have any separate requirements. So that's kind of a big picture answer to a version of Jesse's kind of a very succinct answer.
Yeah.
How early can we submit our self-study? I don't know. I haven't read the kind of form letters we send out to that. So I can't remember off the top of my head if we have something that says a specific date. I don't think so.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I really feel like it depends on what exactly you're asking. If this is an initial program where we've invited you to submit your self-study because your application packet was approved, we will tell you in that approval email for your initial packet when to submit your self-study. Your students or your first cohort, depending on your program, they have to at least be in the professional phase or 3 months prior to graduation. Those are for initial programs. Now, if it's for a continuing program and you have your self-study that you need to submit to us, again, Steph is amazing. She really helps us and she sends out courtesy reminders. She will tell you when to submit it. I mean, if you submit a couple weeks earlier, that's fine, but no, we're not going to do anything with it. We send out things by cycle, so whether it be spring or fall. So we have to wait to receive all of the documents for the 600 plus programs we have, or whatever is going for review at that time. It just depends. And then that's when we start assigning and sending out documents. So it's great to do it early if you feel good about it, but please know we're just going to sit on it until we get everything so that we can send it out accordingly. I hope I've been able to answer that question for you, because I feel like it's like a double-ended question there.
How do you update changes in leadership above program director? You can email this to us at any time, and also we touch base with that information on the annual survey. At the annual survey, we'll show you what we have, and we ask that you review that. And if there are changes, you can make it at that time, or you can do that throughout the year through an email to your program service coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all the questions in the chat. For a brief second, I saw a hand up. I don't know if we answered that question. but feel free to raise that again. I forgot to mention, we can take audio questions if you don't feel like typing something, or if you want to have something with a little more back and forth. Kind of while I'm waiting, I will mention that if you didn't get a chance to see the board update with Mary Beth that we did last week, that should be on the NAACLS news next week. Going through the many thoughtful public comments kind of took up staff's time, as well as preparing for the review committee meetings next week. Or in 2 weeks, next week's the 4th. Sorry. I probably scared Frankie when I've been saying next week this whole time.
It's in 2 weeks. I didn't want to correct you while
Yeah.
you were talking. I think it's the 12th to the 14th, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. Yeah.
Okay, well, it looks like we're done with questions. Thank you all for attending. Frankie, Jesse, thank you for jumping on.
For sure.
We don't have next month scheduled yet, but it'll be on the NAACLS news as soon as we do.